Call to order. Welcome. Welcome to the Laramie City Council work session and special meeting, Monday, May 19th, 2025. And to begin this work session, I would like to ask, are there any public comments on non-agenda items before we start? Seeing none, we will move on to begin our work session, recommended supplemental budget. City Manager Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor Cumby. Good evening, everybody. This is our last work session in the series of, I think, 6 work sessions we've had in total that started about 6 weeks ago. We will wrap up the work session, and then, of course, as you know, Council, the plan for tonight is that we will roll into the special meeting. We are scheduled this evening to start off in the last of the city's major funds, which we have yet to touch upon. And that last fund is the Surface Water Drainage Fund. Council, as you know, this will be, or is, not will be, it is the newest major fund of the city, and it will establish a surface water drainage utility and funding source for the city of Laramie. Council approved this, I believe, back in December, but what we're doing here is building it into the actual budgetary framework, and we've published those plans in the document for you tonight. So with that, I'm going to ask Director Wade if she'd like to cover financial position or prospective financial position, because of course our implementation date is July 1st, and then City Engineer Eric Japp will cover the expenditures that are planned for and described in your booklet. What I will tell you is nothing that you'll hear tonight is any different than what you were told you would hear back in December, but just as a refresher, we thought we would go over that briefly.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Let's talk about the financial position of our new fund, which as of July 1st is $5 million. That $5 million is a transfer from the general fund that the previous council approved when this rate was adopted. And that $5 million was an important part of the 10-year capital investment planning process to ensure that we were able to offer the most affordable rate possible to our ratepayers. And so I want to just talk a little bit about that planning process. I'm sure that City Engineer Japp will have some additional perspective for you. But the 10-year plan, the financial plan that we landed on, was certainly not where we started. Director Webb and I and others worked hard to make sure that appropriate amounts of grant funding were loaded into that plan. And when I say appropriate, I mean not too much, not too little, because either is detrimental to our community and to our ratepayers. And so with the $5 million from the general fund, as well as a several $million placeholder for the next SPT tax, some of you who were on the previous council, if you'll remember, we talked about this, we were able to get that rate down to $167 per 500 square feet. That is an entirely funded 10-year plan with a $60.5 million capital investment, if I am remembering that correctly. We initially loaded about $10 million in grant funding into the plan, and if I am not mistaken, there is a grant in the works that exceeds that. And so we'll be adjusting this plan every year and coming back to you and letting you know what our performance has been, but we are just kicking it off and getting it started with this adopted budget in 2026. Do remember that the general fund has been paying for some startup costs. Those startup costs include a half a year of a few extra positions that were necessary to really get this fund going. The Surface Water Drainage Fund is not going to reimburse the general fund for those costs. The Surface Water Drainage Fund will reimburse the general fund for some minor costs related to implementation next year. If I'm remembering that amount right, I want to say that's somewhere around $40,000, but we launched this fund in as favorable of a way possible to the fund's financial position to help the ratepayers. And I think that is the message that if I were in your seat, I would be most interested in hearing. And with that, I would also note, if you'd like to look at the revenue projection for this fund, you can do so on page 255. You'll see that we're forecasting $3.8 million in user rate revenue in the upcoming year, and about $1.1 million in grant revenue, and about $100,000 in interest income. So the tables you're going to see in this fund are going to be very simple because we're just starting out. Are there any questions that I can answer at this time?
Questions or comments, council?
Okay.
No. Thank you, Director Wade. Good evening, Mr. Tam.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Tonight, I'll start with kind of going through some of our objectives for 2026. If you want to turn to page 255 in the budget book, I'll be kind of starting there and we'll be kind of scrolling down. So looking at the objectives for 2026, our first one is to implement the surface drainage utility business plan by maintaining accurate parcel and impervious area data for the stormwater billing and assessments, managing stormwater infrastructure improvements, administrating the stormwater fee credit program, and ensuring compliance with adopted policies. Next one is going to be to assist in refining operational strategies to enhance the sustainability and effectiveness of the city's stormwater system. Recruit staff and acquire equipment at a level outlined in the surface water financial plan. Camera and clean 30 to 50% of the drainage system annually, and begin design and construction of the projects outlined in the capital improvement plan. We're going to dedicate staff for street sweeping, inspections, and pipe cleaning, and create a robust public outreach and information program. So those are the goals and objectives that we have looking forward into 2026. If you want to then turn down to page 256, kind of down at the bottom there, I'm going to kind of give a summary of our operational supplements. And this kind of summarize, the table below here summarizes that. As was mentioned, this is all the stuff I'll be covering here from here on out was the same that we talked about in December. We're just kind of, as Janine noted, put this into the budget format and everything for our stuff. The first one we have is professional consulting. This is to cover professional engineering and consulting services related to the surface water drainage management. This may be hydraulic modeling, infrastructure planning, and technical support. The next one we have is curb, gutters, and sidewalks. This category supports the maintenance and repair and replacement of sidewalk, curb, and gutter infrastructure to ensure proper drainage and pedestrian safety. We also have other contracted services, and this is necessary for maintaining and improving the stormwater system. This could include vehicle repair and maintenance, employee training and certification, and compliance regulation. We also have gas, oil, and lubricants. This is for the fuel, oil, and lubricant expenses associated with each vehicle and equipment that will be used for the stormwater maintenance. We have storm sewer maintenance supplies, and this is for to work with our gutter bins and basically any kind of maintenance that we need for that. We also have other materials and supplies, and this request is for general operating needs such as sewer jet heads and other supplies for sewer jet or camera, cell phone service, various tools for cleaning inlets, manholes, and pipe. And then we also have a one-time request for billing system implementation transfer to the general fund in there. Kind of moving down into our personnel requests, starting with, we'll have 4 full-time employees. This will be for the maintenance side of it, and they'll be operating the streets equipment operators. These positions will be dedicated primarily to the stormwater maintenance operations, including but not limited to cleaning inlets and maintaining city-owned detention ponds. They'll also use the sewer jet and camera truck and street sweepers. Continuing on, we're going to have one full-time employee with our new senior engineering position to be funded, and that will be in engineering. And then we're also going to have an engineering tech that will also be in engineering, and both these positions will be for the new surface water fund and helping to implement that. We do have some overtime pay in here. That will be if any kind of thing comes up for non-exempt. This will mostly be used by our street if anything kind of comes up after hours. And then kind of in line with that, we have pager pay. They get paid $2 an hour to carry pager for emergency. So that is what we have for personnel requests. We do have some vehicles and equipment that is planned for that. We do have 2 half-ton pickup trucks that are planned to be bought in fiscal year 26. One will be for engineering and one will be for streets. And then we also have a new camera system that will be purchased in 2026. That will be used to camera the lines and kind of figure out where maintenance needs to be worked on. And then we have street sweepers planned in fiscal year replacement in fiscal year 27 and 29. As we look at equipment and capital maintenance, we do have money in here for our stormwater filtration system. These are kind of the gutter bins that we've been placing downtown. It purchases about 2 a year. That helps kind of collect trash and everything from getting into the inlets. We have been putting, as I noted, in the downtown area. We also have in here for cell phones and iPads, and that's for the actual cost of that equipment to use. So the engineering staff uses cell phones and iPads daily in our work. So kind of before I dive into capital projects, is there any questions on any of the operation or equipment or anything like that?
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Director Jepp. Can you explain to me a little bit the difference between the professional and consulting allocation that we have, and why it's ongoing? So that's at 256, sorry, the top line of 256, versus that being like a full-time employee? Like, can you just weed that out a little bit so I understand it a little bit better?
Yes, Your Honorable Mayor, through you. So we use a lot of professional consulting services to kind of help with staff. So this could be anywhere from kind of how we have used in the past is like helping with any kind of modeling or any kind of professional assistance. So yes, staff probably could do some of the work with it, but this is just, since we are short-staffed on some areas, we reach out to professional consultants kind of almost as an extension of our office to assist staff with projects and things like that.
Just a follow-up.
But continue with follow-up.
Thank you. But you are anticipating this to be kind of an ongoing cost, that modeling will need to be updated yearly, that sort of thing?
Yes, Your Honorable Mayor, through you, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just appreciate I want to comment. I appreciate the focus on ongoing maintenance, and I think that we really have not had the infrastructure or the personnel to allow us to do that, and that it has the potential to make a significant difference during heavy rain events. Thank you.
Okay. Dive into capital projects here.
Page?
This is on page 259. So the list of capital projects here actually was originally created from our citywide drainage master plan. So for those of you that were around at that point, we actually, it was kind of a multi-phase project that went over several years. We did master plans for north, south, and west Laramie, and then we combined those master plans. As we developed those projects, we had a matrix to help rank those projects and kind of where they are. And then we've kind of looked at these where it kind of makes sense with other projects as well along those lines. So if you'd like to kind of dive deeper into that, you can find that information in our citywide drainage master plan, which is on engineering's website. So the first project I kind of want to bring your attention to is our CIPP lining. This project was moved from the general fund over to our surface water fund. This is very similar to the project that you guys approved just, I think, a couple weeks ago for the sewer. That also included drainage as well. But this is similar to what we do in our sanitary sewer lines of going in and lining our storm sewer lines. So we have moved this over to the surface water. This is ongoing. Our street manager kind of picks the priority projects based on what he's seen for maintenance, and then engineering kind of works with him to get those projects implemented with the consultant. The next one, we have a project in West Laramie, stormwater upgrades. As we kind of put together these projects, we actually looked to see where it would make sense to kind of combine projects that were close together, and that's one of these, so you're going to see some of those. This one is kind of on the north side of West Laramie, and will be a 24-inch storm sewer in Polk Street from Fillmore Street to Taylor Street, a new 36-inch storm sewer north on Taylor Street to Van Buren, a new elliptical storm sewer from Van Buren Street to Colorado Avenue and to Van Buren and Buchanan Street. And then install also a 24-inch storm sewer from Polk Street and Lincoln Street to Van Buren Street and Lincoln Street. So there is a map in our kind of our master study if you want to go look that to kind of help. But this is, as you kind of start looking at a lot of West Laramie, we don't have a ton of utilities in there for drainage. So in order to start any beginning paving or trying to fix some of the issues out there, we need to kind of go in there and get some of these big outfall lines. So Wyoming Avenue kind of did that, and then this is kind of building off of that Wyoming Avenue project as well to kind of help expand that out there. The next project we have is an optimized outlet structure. I do kind of want to talk about this one and kind of some others. So as we did our North Laramie study, we actually found several existing ponds, especially in the north side of town, that needed to be improved. These improvements can be from just a different outlet structure, could be to some minor grading in that pond to kind of help increase the capacity. We're actually looking at some water control things, but these were kind of identified of areas where we have existing infrastructure and some modifications to those ponds. We could definitely increase the capacity. So as I kind of go through here, you're going to see several ponds that are kind of on that north side. That's kind of what the main purpose of this one is. But this particular project's for 22nd and Buford, or what we call Scout Park, and then also 22nd and Reynolds Street. And these will be to construct new outlet structures at the orifice of there, and then also an emergency spillway at 22nd and Reynolds Street. The next one that is kind of similar to what I was just mentioning is to enlarge the Buford and 10th Street detention pond. And that's to enlarge that to approximately 1.7 acre feet. And then the next one we have is to enlarge the 30th and Reynolds detention pond, and that's to increase the capacity in there, and then that one also optimizes the outlet structure, and we'll look at water quality treatment as well. Moving on page 263, we have our new detention pond that we're looking at east of Jacoby Ridge. This is one of the projects that we're hoping that we can get an NRCS grant for. We have been working with them, and it's looking pretty favorably now, but nothing's been finalized yet. This pond is a new pond that's basically east of the Jacoby golf course right there, kind of where we have the trail. It doesn't put a huge impact to that area in there. It just kind of builds a big berm that during high flow events would build up water and then release it in that area. Do want to draw attention to this project. So when we were doing the South Laramie, Spring Creek, we have a lot of concerns with flooding, but there's not a lot of options that we could actually do to help solve that. So as we worked with our consultant and staff, one of the options we came up with is putting this detention pond here. And what this does is this allows us to capture water, because a lot of the water coming into Spring Creek is coming off all the hills up to Pole Mountain to the east of us. And what this actually could do is it would capture the water at this location, allow all the rainwater in town to kind of drain through Spring Creek and hold this water back and then release it at a different time. So this was kind of one of the options that was identified to help with those capacity issues that we're seeing in Spring Creek. So we are working with NRCS on this one, and then we'll also be working with UW because it is their land, so it's kind of, the whole project is contingent if they would support it or not. So, but we are working on that one. We also have, looking again on 263, we have another West Laramie storm improvements, and this is kind of more on the south side of Snowy Range. This project will upgrade the existing storm sewer to a 30-inch on Buchanan, south of Harrison Street, and install a new 30-inch storm sewer along Arthur Street from Franklin to Snowy Range Road. So we continue on to page 264. We have another one of those ponds I was talking about on the north side, and this is at 15th and Harney. This is to try to improve the capacity of that one and optimize the structure with water quality treatments. The next project we have here is Labonte Park to Outfall Storm Sewer. So with also on the north side of town, Labonte Park was identified as trying to improve that area around there and trying to make some improvements. This is also one, while we don't have it directly planned in here with the budgeting, we are talking with NRCS about this project as well. And you'll see Labonte a little bit farther down, but in recent discussions with NRCS, they were possibly looking at all the projects associated with this one. So this one will kind of be developing, but this essentially, we have an outfall line that needs to be upsized that goes from Labonte Park all the way down to kind of where PFE Road is. And that's where the outlet of that line is down our new PRR land. So this project would be upsizing all that land or all that line, and this would be need to be done to help with that draining of Labonte up there. I'm going to skip the 30th because we don't have that till 28, and then want to bring your attention, though, we have another West Laramie project on the bottom of page 265, the new storm sewer in Harrison, Hayes, and Grant. And I just want to bring this to your attention because the project I was talking about that was south of Snowy Range, this is the kind of building on that project and helping to continue that one. And it's to install a new short 18-inch storm sewer segment of Harrison along Hayes Street, and then install a new 18-inch from Harrison Street along Grant Street, and a new 36-inch storm sewer pipe along Harrison from Hayes to Lincoln. Getting down to page 266, that's kind of actually the Labonte Park Improvement Project, and that would kind of be looking at improving the area around Labonte Park and some of the outlets and inlets for that as well. And as I noted, hopefully that one we can get some NRCS funds for that. So that is, I think, the projects I kind of wanted to cover looking at this. Is there any kind of questions I can answer on projects?
Questions or comments, council? Councilor Freed?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Japp. I'm hoping you guys can hear me okay. Is that good?
Hold on 1 second. We need to adjust your volume just a bit. Up just a bit.
How about now, Mayor? Can you hear me?
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Japp. A quick question on page 265, talking about the new storm sewer in Harrison, Hayes, and Grant. Just curious, what's the difference between the short 18-inch storm sewer segment versus the 36? Obviously the size, but is that just because you don't anticipate needing the biggest 36-inch sewer pipe, or could you just describe the difference and why they're needed that way? Thanks.
Your Honorable Mayor, through you, I think with that description, we were just kind of noting it's a short section of pipe is what that was noting, rather than installing like several blocks. It's just a short section in that area that needs to be installed.
Great. Thank you.
Further comments or questions? I see none.
Okay. So I think that is all that I had for our surface water program.
Thank you very much.
Council, we have two other minor funds that we wanted to be sure to touch on, at least be available to answer any questions that you may have. And the first of those, let me get you a page number reference here. Page 269. This is the Economic Development Fund. I mentioned to you during one of our work sessions that what is notable in this fund this year is really just the grant for the Wyoming Technical Institute. Sorry, had to get the right page. Okay. So, you will see here the Wyotech facility placeholder for a $5 million grant, $5 million loan. And that is really the change that you see in this fund this year, is to account for that. Director Wade, anything else you'd like to mention there? Okay. And then if you look at page 280, you will see the 2018 specific purpose tax fund. And again, there really is no change as these are approved by the voters, and we're just budgeting for them as money becomes available for unbonded and bonded projects. So with that, we have covered all of the funds, even the little baby funds that we talked about last week, like Cemetery Perpetual Trust Fund. Anything else you wanted to address, Jen? Okay. So I just wanted to wrap up, Council, with a few points and sort of set the stage for where we go after we adopt the supplemental budget, which by state law we must do by, I believe, the second Tuesday in June. A few reminders about some of the major items that we've covered in terms of ideas in these 6 work sessions. In putting your recommended budget together, it is the staff's goal, and obviously my goal as well, that we touch on the goals of the City Council. So by way of reminder, here are just a few of the big areas. You asked us to be mindful about enabling resources and inputs, whether that is enabling financial resources or staffing resources, things of that nature. We spoke last week about the one new position that I am recommending in the general fund, and that is for that assistant supervisor at the Ice and Events Arena as an enabling resource and a position that has the potential to generate revenue to offset the cost of those expenses. In addition, I am recommending some part-time additional support in that department for the same reason. We also spoke to you about the facility needs assessment that we are engaging in for our public safety facilities, trying to understand what does police, fire, EMS need in order to be in a sustainable, well-situated position for the foreseeable decade or two. So we will be hopefully completing that assessment this year and setting us up to have conversations with the community if that needs analysis identifies that there are in fact needs that we need to address and that require financial resources. You had asked us to be mindful of housing ready and business ready infrastructure. So we are continuing, as you've seen, through various capital projects, a number of projects, and then have some new projects recommended as well that support the growth of businesses and housing in our community. And then you'll remember that I am recommending the new program, which we will need to flesh out in coming months, but I do have a program design for that $5 million program that would be directly targeted at bringing infrastructure to bear when we know we have a housing developer ready to go and that can bring new housing online quickly. So that recommendation is in the budget. You asked us to look at safety and well-being. So you just heard from City Engineer Japp about surface water drainage. For my part, I believe that is one of probably the largest safety programs that we have going on in the city right now outside of public safety proper. We all know that the community has experienced significant flooding during storm events in the last number of years, and that there are deficiencies in that system, and this new surface water drainage fund is going to allow this city for the first time ever to have some resources that will be directly committed to addressing those issues. Also in public safety, as you saw, a lot of new equipment and apparatus, which is really the lifeblood of our police officers and fire personnel getting their jobs done. And then lastly, in public transportation and accessibility, you'd asked us to be mindful there. We are continuing, of course, with the public transportation plan as well as the Reconnecting Communities plan, and we are also looking at completing projects in the parks that improve some of our accessibility there, and we now have in hand the data that analyzed our curb, gutter, and sidewalks to determine how we move forward with a larger plan to really start to address the walkability and accessibility issues across those concrete amenities, if you will, in the community in a comprehensive way. Lastly, with respect to environmental stewardship, as you know, we didn't touch on this much in the water fund, but it is an ongoing project. The ranch is paused, and we do have resources, the renting of the ranch, the leasing of the ranch is on pause for the monolith, and so the city's directly operating both of the ranches at this point in time, and we're doing that for a period of 3 years while we will conduct really a health analysis, understand what is the health of those lands and what would a proper long-term land use and management plan look like for those really important community assets. So there's kind of a high-level overview touching on some of the bigger issues under your community goals. I want to remind you that your enterprise funds, that's your water fund, your surface water drainage fund you just heard about, your sanitary sewer, and your solid waste funds are healthy. And they are healthy, in my opinion, because they are managed locally. And this body has been very responsible in setting proper rates to sustain those services. As you know, we don't have to make a profit like a business does, but they are business activities, and we must break even. And so you've been very astute in doing that. Your general fund, I wish I could say, was in an equally healthy position, but the general fund, while it is fairly stable right now, because that general fund is reliant on intergovernmental revenue and taxes to the tune of anywhere from 60 to 80% coming from outside sources in any given year, I have to tell you that it is very vulnerable currently and certainly going into the future. So I wanted to close out talking tonight a little bit about what you should expect after this evening and in coming months so that we can start to wrap our head around the vulnerability of the general fund, because it is a critical part of delivering all of the major governmental services we provide that the community expect and rely on. So I'll say first, remember your general fund is about 60% personnel. This is where we provide services to humans. And as I always say, thus far AI cannot do all of those jobs, and it still takes one human to provide services to other community members. So the way that we've been able to make our general fund as sustainable as possible is by relying as little as possible on intergovernmental revenues shared by the state of Wyoming, but also by very carefully managing the addition of personnel to our operations. And so you are well aware of the fact that the city has pretty much the same number of permanent staff members now that it did some 10 years ago. Fortunately, AI and technology have enabled us to be more efficient with staff time, so we're very diligent in not trying to grow staff. That is why it's always a very difficult decision when I recommend new positions to you, but sometimes technology can't do everything. The only other new positions recommended to you are in the surface water drainage fund. I wanted to make sure that that was clear and apparent, even though the city engineer just mentioned that. Where personnel are recommended to you, we do that believing that there's a return on that investment and that position can generate revenue. I think that that is especially important right now because as a multi-million-dollar business, we are experiencing all of the same inflationary and pricing pressures that anybody else's business is from, we heard about Walmart today on the news. I don't know if you heard that, but we are experiencing those as well. And I think after your review of the budget, you see that, right? Materials and supplies costs are going up. The chemicals we need to operate the pools, the chemicals that are involved in the water and wastewater systems, things that we're a captive purchaser of, those prices are changing and increasing in the past few years, and they will continue, I think, to increase in the short term, at least to some degree. So because we are experiencing rising costs there, diligence around personnel, I think, is even more important. Your revenue to the general fund, direct distribution, we talked about that. The direct distribution decreased this year by $1.5 million for the fiscal year that will start July 1st. That is because we've seen some one-time revenue from industry, we believe wind development in Albany County. So we're able to bear the brunt of that in the short term, but in the long term, we need to be more thoughtful as we approach the next biennium. That is being coupled with a decline in property tax actions of the 24 legislature, then I'll remind you, this is all on page 29 to 31. The 24 legislature, the 25 legislature, and the upcoming fall election in 2026 will all determine what the future of property tax is in Wyoming. And I think we all understand now, after a pretty robust conversation around the state in the last year, the property tax doesn't support state government, right? When the state cuts property tax, or when the legislature cuts property tax, they're cutting local services, not statewide services. So we're going to have to position ourselves to be able to bear those decreases. I'll mention a couple other things that could be good news or could be bad news. We don't know yet. Sales and use tax is a very important source of revenue as well, in addition to that direct distribution and property tax. It is going to be taken up by the legislature as an interim topic. That could be bad, that could be good. We don't know yet, but it's going to be a big conversation, as property tax has been recently. And then lastly, we do have some franchise renegotiations this year, and that could change to some degree what our franchise fee revenue looks like. I don't know yet if that will be good or bad, but that is a change in potential future revenue. What I would say about that is we shouldn't get too excited, I suppose. Most of our franchise taxes are on a percent basis, and so they do fluctuate naturally with economic activity, and I doubt we'll see any major increases or decreases there when you look at it on a time horizon of, more than 3 or 4 years. So with all of those revenue changes taken into account, we're going to need to do some planning leading up to the biennium budget, and I would like to involve the council in that planning. I was thinking this weekend about your work plan for the next 6 months, and it's big. It's big because we're going to need to talk about this. I need to understand from you as the elected officials, and I assume you're going to want to talk to your constituents as well, about what should we cut if these intergovernmental revenues continue to decline and we are forced to make changes in how we provide services locally. So we'll need to be having those conversations. I wish I could say this was the end of budget tonight, but unfortunately, because we are in this changing landscape, it just won't be. And we're going to have to probably have some public meetings and really talk to the community about what this means and what they expect for the future. So I leave you with those happy words. I should have ended on the happy note about the enterprise funds and not on the sad note about the general fund being a little bit vulnerable for the future. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, Council.
Councilors, any questions or comments? Councilor O'Doherty.
I'm the latecomer because, I forgot that this was happening on Monday. Anyway, but I wanted to thank the engineering staff for the Stormwater Fund. I think this is very timely. I'm glad we passed it. It was really a painful decision for council to make. But with the other funds being, us having no control over them, and then I can see how much thought is going into where do we retain water for these big storm events that we may be on our own. I mean, the people in Tennessee are finding out there's no FEMA for them. So for us to have detention ponds, detention ponds, and good storm system is going to be really important, I think, because I think that's our biggest threat, and fire, unfortunately. So I really appreciate all the thought that's gone into it, and that you came up with a way to fund this with this enterprise fund, and yeah, I think it will help us. Thanks.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank everybody over the last 6 meetings, the thoughtfulness, the explanations. I can't imagine how much time it took to put all that together on top of your regular day job. So thank you very much. It's been very educational, especially for myself and any new counselor. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to thank City Manager and all of the staff, the directors, for helping guide us through this. It's made it so much more palatable for those of us who are not necessarily well-versed in budget. Again, I just want to clarify something with city manager. We went in the direction of establishing the Stormwater Enterprise Fund at the direction and suggestion of our state legislature as they reminded us of the tools we had to care for our own communities and not expect distribution funds for those types of things in the future. Isn't that what led to the work we've done on that?
Mayor, thank you for the question. I think in general that is the case. I mean, there was a lot of different, of course, voices coming out of the legislature, and there was some lack of clarity around whether cities had the authority to implement surface water drainage funds. So the legislature did clarify that that authority existed, and that was very important and meaningful. But at the time that that conversation was had now a couple of years ago, there was corresponding advice, if you will, from legislators from various areas of the state saying, we're going to approve this because you guys, you need to take care of your own house, so to speak. And so I think that's part of the bigger, broader policy conversation going on about local control. Do cities adequately exert the authority available to them to provide for their citizens? Do they rely too much on state shared revenue? Is that appropriate? Is that not? Is that where the state wants to be? So yes, I think largely everything you said is true, and we are very appreciative that they gave us the clear authority under law for surface water drainage. Yeah.
I was very pleased as we were going through this to look at the various projects and go, yep, that's a problem, that's a problem. And so I think that the plan really addresses some of the major flooding issues that we've had in some of these larger rain events.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a little while to get there, but I think it's going to make a significant impact.
Mayor, I would agree. And certainly when the city engineer tells us a problem versus when our own eyes know it's a problem, when we know it's a problem and not just Eric, it's a really big problem, right? If I could, Mayor, I forgot to mention a really important item in your budget. And Jen just reminded me, I glossed over it. I got too worked up about worrying about the general fund's future. In the general fund, and this of course ties directly to council's goals as well. I want to say this also ties to the data that we've seen come back from our citizens in our community survey and in our budget survey. So as you know, we have $6 million appropriated already in this biennium budget for street repair and maintenance. And I want to remind you that I am recommending that you formally commit an additional $14 million from unallocated reserve to improve those pavement conditions and address the backlog of maintenance. That's really notable. That's $20 million. And I'll be honest with you, if you agree with this, I'm worried that we're even going to be able to find enough contractors to do the work. But Public Works and Engineering are working on a plan for how we would allocate $20 million to really address a backlog. And we're able to do that because of this one-time revenue that we have been experiencing in the last couple of years. And also, we are able to seed the Surface Water Drainage Fund with $5 million in startup costs from that as well. So those are both really historic investments that we're able to make right now, but we certainly can't rely on into the future. So anyway, I want to remind you, lots of street work, and I know I stand up here right now knowing everybody's tired of dodging around 3rd Street, right? But we all know we need to make that investment in our streets. It may mean we have 3 or 4 or 5 more summers that we have to dodge some construction, but hopefully it'll all be for good.
Any questions or comments, councilors? I just want to say thanks for reminding us of that. I think it's a very important item, and it certainly is One of the top concerns that our citizens have, we know that our weather doesn't contribute to our streets being easy to maintain, and then I would assume that we're able to advance to this project because we have completed so much work on the infrastructure below the streets that we are now able to begin a paving project on top of that. So it's taken us many years to get to this point where the infrastructure was ready to be resurfaced. So thank you. Any other? All right. And does that conclude the presentation?
That concludes your work session. Yeah.
All right, then I'll turn it over right now. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none. Councillor O'Doherty, would you like to adjourn this?
I move we adjourn the work session to convene a special meeting of Laramie City Council.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
We don't have to.
No votes. Okay. We are adjourned. Does anybody need a break, or we go right into it? We'll go right into it. All right. So, start of the special meeting, call to order, and Assistant City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Honorable Mayor, do we need to read the public notice first?
I don't have that on my agenda. Yes, please do.
Okay. Notice is hereby given that a work session and special meeting of the Laramie City Council will be held Monday, May 19, 2025, 6 p.m. at City Hall Council Chambers, 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming, and via Zoom meeting ID 844-607-7265, passcode 776299, for the following purpose: work session, recommended supplemental budget, special meeting, and now we will call to order. Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Bowling. Absent. Freed.
Here.
Lockhart.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
O'Doherty.
Here.
Shumway. Absent. Vijo.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Cumby.
Here.
Okay, that's 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to public comment on non-agenda items. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move into our agenda. First item. Can you read that?
I have it open.
You have it open. If you could read the motion, please.
I move to approve the city manager's recommended 4 additional changes for the fiscal year 2026 budget, decreasing it by $157,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Newman, second by Richardson. Good evening, Director Wade.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor and City Councilors. As many of you know, at the very end of our budget work sessions and the beginning of the special meeting, staff recommend to you their changes to the recommended budget. These changes are necessary because there are changes in circumstances that happen in between when budget planning wraps up in February and March and when we actually publish the budget book. This year, I'm happy to report that we have very few changes to recommend to you. I'm going to go over each of those with you this evening and give you an opportunity to ask questions. The first change is an increase of $20,000 in the City Clerk's Division for special election funding. This request actually hit right as the budget team was wrapping up the budget book, and it didn't quite make it in. This request is necessary potentially necessary because of the timing of our local sales and use tax collections next year. In short, we're not quite sure if we're going to need this this funding or not, but given the importance of our local sales and use tax collections, the clerk and the city manager have advised that you go ahead and consider appropriating these funds. The second item for your consideration this evening is a $30,000 increase in the general fund general accounts division to host the WHAM conference. I believe many of you are aware that we were the chosen city for this conference. This $30,000 increase does come with offsetting revenue for $15,000. Additionally, in the general fund, Assistant City Manager Feeser has recommended an additional $20,000 to support urban renewal agency plans and projects. I'm sure many of you are aware of the activities of the URA, and he felt that having some additional funds on hand next year for the many irons in the fire right now would be beneficial. The general fund is going to provide the financial resources for this appropriation rather than it coming out of the Economic Development Fund, and that's just to keep that Economic Development Fund corpus intact. In the Economic Development Fund, we're recommending that $20,000 increase for the URA, and so this is a really great, simple example of how these inter-fund transfers work for some of our newer council members. And so you see that expense going out of the general fund. We also have an expense in the Economic Development Fund, but that Economic Development Fund is going to receive revenue as well for $20,000, and so its financial position is going to stay the same. I hope I did a good job summarizing that for you all. In the Recreation Center Fund, you may remember at our last work session, Director Bork told you all that he is recommending that we move up the UV pool system upgrade, and I'm sure I botched that title. There's two good points about that. The first is that we get to start the project a little sooner, and his estimates are a little bit more refined than they even were when he was compiling his budgetary estimates. So instead of $250,000, he's now estimating $200,000. You will consider an amendment to the 2025 budget in relation to that project tomorrow evening. And so just kind of file that one away. It's going to come right around again really quickly. You will also notice, if you look at the capital at the final budget book, that the capital support transfer for the Recreation Center in 2026 will also be reduced because this project is moving in between fiscal years. I don't want to highlight that too much tonight because that capital support is still happening, but it's happening in a different fiscal year. And finally, our IT Director, Jonathan Rhodes, has recommended an additional $3,000 for laptop replacements in the Solid Waste Fund. There was $1,100 appropriated for 2026 already, but Director Rhodes said that that was insufficient to meet the replacement schedule for the solid waste operation. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions or comments, councilors? I just wanted to clarify for the public that WHAM is the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and they will bring, and WHAM represents all 99 communities in Wyoming, and we will be hosting the summer conference next year in Laramie, which has the potential to bring city manager, what would your estimate be of attendance?
It's usually 270, I think, right around there to 300.
So just under 300 people into our beautiful community. So I just wanted to clarify what that expense was. Yes, Councilor Newman.
Building off of that, but not only are we going to get some revenue with people coming here, but it also saves revenue that we spend when we go other places, right? So like we're all going to go next month and we all have travel costs and room and board there. So I think this is well spent, and in the long run, I think we'll see a better ROI than somebody else hosting it.
Any further questions or comments? I turn it over to, thank you very much. Now, are there any public comments on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, Assistant City Manager, can you call the vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Bowling, absent. Freed.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes?
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Vigil.
Yes.
Shumway, absent. Richardson.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Mayor, that's 7 yeses and 2 absent.
Thank you. That motion passes. Next, I'd like to ask, are there any other motions from council to amend the supplemental budget? Councilor Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. My first motion, I move to broaden the scope of the recommended youth sports study general fund fiscal year 2026 in the amount of $275,000 to include sports facility requirements for community members of all ages.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Newman, second by Lockhart. Yes. Director Bork.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is something that I think is a really good move to expand the scope of this sports study. When we were originally envisioning this this study, as I explained, it's going to start with a needs assessment, community-wide, multiple different ways for the community to engage and let us know what the needs are. And most of the people that we anticipate that we're going to be providing that input were adults, and we were asking them about youth sports in the original scope. This really just expands the scope just a little bit to include really all sports, to expand outside of the youth and really make it more of a community-wide. I do not anticipate that this requires any additional funding to the request that was already in the budget. It'll just expand our scope a little bit, and we may want to look at, when we're putting this out, to adding a couple of additional community engagement meetings, stakeholder meetings, things like that, but again, not going beyond what's already been budgeted for.
Thank you, Director Bork. Questions or comments? Councilor Newman?
Ditto, because those were my notes, because that's like kind of what I wrote down, so good job.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I'm happy to support this. I'm glad you brought that up because we have the Senior Olympics often in Laramie and Special Olympics, and we have cross-country skiing and mountain biking races nearby, so it'd be good to include all the adult activities. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Bork. I am curious if you can give us a ballpark. One of the things I've been thinking about with this budget amendment is trying to have an understanding of how much certain facilities cost. If we were to do something, similar to what Casper has done, what is the cost of that? If there was something that was substantially smaller, what would the cost of that be? Just so in my mind I can think about, and I recognize this will help flesh some of that out, but do you have a sense of some of those numbers?
Honorable Mayor, through you,
yes.
That's a very dangerous question to ask, because I don't want to be held to anything, because it really depends on what the community tells us that they're interested in. There's such a variety, and again, I don't want to pigeonhole, but for example, a hockey facility, if it was desired to have a larger, more robust hockey facility, potentially even with 2 sheets of ice, the scope, it could be a very, very simple design of, not a whole lot of frill, or you could have something much more expansive. The much more expansive could be, 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount that a smaller, more, basic facility could be. Same thing with any kind of outdoor sports facility. It really depends. Are we talking grass? Are we talking artificial turf fields? Are we talking, things with support facilities like concessions and locker rooms, on site, things like that. So it's really difficult to determine. What I'm hoping to get out of this study is not just a needs assessment, though, but really as we talked about in the work session, an economic impact study and a feasibility study. And the feasibility study is both kind of a business plan of, could this be a sustainable facility, but also, what mechanisms is the community willing to look at for that sustainability? Or, is it, higher fees? Is it a community bond, as was talked about? So really, I want it to be as comprehensive so that we don't do what I was initially concerned about, which is creating this needs assessment that gets the community's expectations that we're going to build X, Y, or Z. I really want it to be, here's what the community has prioritized that they really find as the top priorities, and then what are the feasibility of the sustainability, the business plan, the enterprise funding models of how those could actually operate. And that's what I really hope to get out of this very comprehensive study. So I hate to dance around the answer and not give you one, but I would really hate to have anybody come back and say, well, Director Bork said that it was going to cost this much to do this, and it really just depends on what the community identifies that they want in any individual facility that may be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bork, and I appreciate your thoughtful response, and you're reminding us that this project would be community-driven.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilor Newman, any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Next, is there any public comment on this amendment? Seeing none, Assistant City Manager, can you call the vote, please?
Absolutely. Honorable Mayor, we'll start with Freed,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes?
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Shumway absent, Feehill,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Bowling absent, Cumby.
Yes.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, that's 7 yeses, 0 noes, and 2 absent.
That motion passes. Are there any other motions? Councilor Newman.
I move to amend the fiscal year 2026 general fund budget by a one-time amount of $300,000 for a small landlord improvement program, with the city council determining the program guidelines and staff implementing in the upcoming fiscal year. Unused funds would be carried forward to subsequent fiscal years.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion by Newman, second by Lockhart. Councilor Newman, would you like to comment?
I would. So this is the work session that I called and Councilor Bowling seconded. And there will be, talking to city staff, there'll be about 3 different work sessions to implement and go over this this program. I've spent about 6 months doing the kind of some groundwork on this, and then but there's still some loopholes and some other stuff that city staff needs to help us with, but getting it and then showing the mayor this, we decided that this is probably the best way forward. One of our city goals is to do something to this effect and hire somebody. Right now, we won't have to hire anybody because we don't have a program, which is why you will see that there is no funds for that yet. But once we get this this program up and going, we will probably need a staff member for helping with applications and enforcement and that kind of thing. So, but this is just for the program, and you will get more information when we have that work session. The money just needed to kind of be allocated before we did that.
Thank you, Counselor. Any comments or questions? Counselor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Counselor Newman. What brought you to that $300,000 amount?
No clue. So there are, oh, Mayor,
Counselor Newman.
I picked the number, I won't lie. But looking nationwide, there are cities and towns that provide $1 million for this fund, right? There are cities that do $500,000. And I just picked a number that represents how much money we collect through our landlord program now, over, I think we said 3 years, if I remember right. So that's where that number came from.
Counselor O'Doherty.
I was going to ask about the number, but also I was thinking that Austin or San Antonio, one of the places that I went to for a meeting, they have things like, because a lot of people can't come up with the deposit, if they could pay an insurance that's like deposit insurance for renters, that might be something that this fund could be used for, to create something, I mean, not for us to administer, but for us to create. So I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
And this will be a good topic for the work sessions. Counselor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I really like this idea because Lord knows how many landlords have not even registered their properties yet under the program. And we've already heard, I've heard since last fall, many complaints or due to the cost, the expense it is to bring these facilities up to code, and complaints from people saying, so-and-so hasn't done it, why did I have to do it, or things like that. And I think this would show how we're trying to help them, and it encourages people to actually do what they're supposed to do. So it shows that we're trying to meet them in the middle, so to speak.
Thank you. Any other comment? Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you. Excuse me. I appreciate this as well. I think it is a nice opportunity for us to explore what Councilor Newman has kind of brought forward and see if we want to build on it, see if there need to be changes to it. I think it's great that we're thinking more seriously about the program. I would also be okay. I really can go either way about putting a one-time fund of $300,000 or going through these 3 work sessions and similarly determining what we think that amount would need to be and put that money forward after that. But I'm also great with the $300,000 because we can adjust that later. So either way is great, and I just appreciate the work on it. So.
Thank you. And that could be amended if after work sessions we felt that necessary. And Councilor Newman, I appreciate your taking the initiative on this and preparing an initial idea and structure where now we can get council input and we can begin to craft something that will be meaningful to the citizens of our community. Councilor Director Wade, thank you very much for your advice and working with Councilor Newman and I as we sat in your office, and I appreciate all the input that's gone into this, and I do look forward to our work sessions. So yes, Councilor Newman.
Just for full disclosure, the mayor and vice mayor have received what my program is. So they might have a little bit more insight, but just kind of, I wanted to send it to them since they were our leadership to kind of see if I was going in the right direction before I met with staff and to work through this. So just for full disclosure.
And as you might imagine, we immediately had suggestions. So It'll be fun to do it in a work session. Next, I turn it over to the public. Is there any public comment on this amendment item? What was that? Okay, seeing none. Assistant City Manager, can you call the vote, please?
Yes, ma'am, Honorable Mayor. We'll start with Lockhart,
Here.
or
Here.
No.
No, yes.
Glad you started.
Newman,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Shumway absent, Behill,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Bowling absent, Freed,
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Honorable Mayor, that's 7 yeses, 0 nos, 2 absent.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. That motion passes. And finally, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, I turn it over to Councilor O'Doherty.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye. Second and aye.
Second? In favor?
Yeah, yes.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I didn't expect that.